Bill Hwang sat alone in his dimly lit cell, the rhythmic drip of a leaking pipe punctuating the silence. It had been months since his world had collapsed, months since Archegos capital, a fortress of his making, had crumbled, leaving financial chaos in its wake. Banks had suffered catastrophic losses, and Hwang himself had become the face of greed and hubris in the media. But as he stared at the gray walls around him, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his downfall than bad trades and leverage. Something darker lurked beneath the surface, though he had no proof. His thoughts were interrupted by the guard's voice. "You've got a visitor." Hwang frowned. Visitors were rare, especially now that his reputation was in shreds. He was led to a small, cold visitation room where a man in a nondescript suit waited. His face was unfamiliar, but his demeanor was calm, almost calculated. "Mr. Hwang," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm Michael Graves. I've been following your case." Hwang didn't take the hand. "And why would you care about my case?" Graves leaned back in his chair, unfazed. "Because it's not just your case, Mr. Hwang. It's part of a much bigger story." He slid a thin envelope across the table, one that involves powers far beyond Wall Street. Curiosity got the better of him. Hwang opened the envelope and pulled out a series of photographs, documents, and news clippings. At first glance, they seemed unrelated. Images of the Vatican, a global summit, financial spreadsheets with cryptic annotations. But as he pieced them together, a chilling narrative began to emerge. "What am I looking at?" Hwang asked, his voice cautious. "Evidence," Graves replied. "Your fall wasn't just about greed or risk. It was orchestrated by forces that see themselves as the rightful rulers of the world, forces within the Vatican." Hwang scoffed. "The Vatican? That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Graves countered. He tapped one of the documents, a ledger showing vast sums of money moving through Vatican-controlled accounts. These aren't just donations or investments. They're part of a coordinated effort to undermine the United States and shift global power back to Rome. Graves leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "For centuries, the Vatican has operated in the shadows, using religion as a tool to mask its true ambitions. They believe the world's current power structures, especially the dominance of the United States, are a threat to what they call the divine order." Hwang felt a chill creep up his spine. "And how does this involve me?" "Archegos wasn't just a hedge fund," Graves said. "It was a vessel. You were unknowingly funding projects tied to their agenda, manipulating markets, destabilizing economies, creating the chaos they need to reclaim control." Hwang's mind raced. The idea was absurd, yet the documents before him painted a disturbing picture. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you have a choice," Graves said. "You can let this die here, buried in your cell, or you can help expose them." Hwang's skepticism gave way to anger. "Expose them? You think anyone will believe me? I'm already a scapegoat. My name is Mud." Graves smiled faintly. "That's exactly why you're the perfect messenger. No one would expect you to uncover something this big. You have nothing left to lose." Before Hwang could respond, the guard opened the door. "Time's up." Graves stood, adjusting his suit. "Think about it, Mr. Hwang. The Vatican doesn't tolerate loose ends. If you don't act, they will. And when they do, it'll be too late for all of us." He walked out, leaving Hwang alone with the envelope. Back in his cell, Hwang spread the documents across his cot. The evidence was damning. Secret meetings between Vatican officials and global leaders, transfers of unimaginable wealth, and references to a project cryptically labeled Nexus DI. As he stared at the photos of the Pope shaking hands with influential CEOs and political figures, one question consumed him. Was this real? In the silence of the night, he heard the faint echo of a whisper, soft but unmistakable. "The faithful will inherit the earth." Bill Hwang couldn't sleep. The envelope sat on the edge of his cot, its contents burned into his mind. The whispers from Michael Graves haunted him. The Vatican doesn't tolerate loose ends. Morning came too quickly, and with it, a knock on his cell door. A guard entered, leaving his breakfast tray and a folded note on top. The handwriting was clean, deliberate. "Do not use the phone. They are watching. Read the documents again. The answers are there." Hwang's unease deepened. Who had left the note? Graves? Someone else? Either way, it confirmed his growing paranoia. This wasn't just about financial missteps. This was a conspiracy far larger than he had imagined. He spent the day meticulously reviewing the documents Graves had given him. At first glance, they seemed scattered. Bank statements, massive transfers to accounts controlled by entities tied to the Vatican, meeting logs, high-level discussions between clergy and global leaders, often disguised as religious diplomacy, photos, key moments captured, a Vatican cardinal shaking hands with a Russian oligarch, the Pope at an undisclosed summit in Switzerland, the symbol, Nexus Dei, etched onto a marble pedestal. But the deeper Hwang dug, the clearer the pattern became. One ledger stood out. It detailed transactions totaling billions of dollars routed through shell corporations and offshore accounts. These funds were linked to the destabilization of key economies, including an artificial financial crisis in Eastern Europe and a manipulation of oil markets in the Middle East. Hwang's heart sank. These weren't just isolated actions. They were calculated moves to weaken global stability, and at the center of it all was the United States. Another document described a Vatican-led initiative known as Pax Vaticana. Its stated goal was the restoration of divine order, but its methods were chilling, undermining American political alliances, dividing the nation through cultural and ideological conflicts, consolidating global financial power in Vatican-controlled institutions. Hwang leaned back, his pulse racing. He realized that his fall from grace had been part of a larger plan. Archegos's collapse wasn't an accident. It had been engineered to create ripples in the U.S. financial markets, a domino meant to tip others. The name Nexus Dei appeared repeatedly, though its meaning remained unclear. One note scrawled in the margins caught his eye. "The stone is the key. Without it, the plan fails." As he stared at the phrase, a guard appeared at his cell. "You've got another visitor," the man grunted. Hwang hesitated. He hadn't asked for a visit. He gathered the documents, hiding them beneath his mattress, and followed the guard to the visitation room. Waiting for him was a tall man in priestly robes, his demeanor calm and imposing. "Mr. Hwang," the man said, his voice smooth. "I am Father Adrian. I've come to speak on behalf of the church." Hwang froze, his mind racing. Father Adrian smiled faintly. "You seem surprised. The Vatican doesn't usually take an interest in matters such as yours. But your situation is unique." "Unique how?" Hwang asked, his voice measured. "Let's just say you've stumbled onto truths that aren't meant for everyone," Adrian said. He leaned forward, his tone soft but firm. "Truths that could be dangerous if misunderstood." Hwang's hands tightened on the table. "You mean truths you don't want exposed?" Adrian's smile didn't waver. "The Church has always acted in the best interest of humanity. Sometimes that requires discretion." Hwang scoffed. "Discretion? You're destabilizing entire nations, manipulating economies, and for what? Power?" "Balance," Adrian corrected. "The United States has overstepped its role in the divine order. Its dominance has bred chaos, not harmony. The Church seeks to restore what was lost, a world where faith and stability reign." Hwang shook his head, anger bubbling to the surface. "And you think you can do that by tearing down everything? By plunging the world into chaos?" Adrian's expression darkened. "The faithful understand that order sometimes requires sacrifice. The unfaithful, like you, mistake progress for arrogance. But your role in this is over, Mr. Hwang." He stood, straightening his robes. "This is your only warning. Let go of whatever you think you've uncovered. The Church is not your enemy, unless you make it so." As he walked toward the door, he paused. "And remember, Mr. Hwang, faith always triumphs over doubt." Back in his cell, Hwang felt the weight of Adrian's words. The Vatican's reach was greater than he had imagined, and their conviction was unshakable. But the documents told a story too dangerous to ignore. Hwang realized he had no choice. He had to find out what Nexus Dei meant, and why the Vatican feared it being exposed. The note he had hidden under his mattress burned in his mind. "The stone is the key." That night, Hwang resolved to dig deeper. Even if it cost him everything, the world needed to know. The phrase, "the stone is the key," consumed Bill Hwang's thoughts. He spent the following days studying every document Graves had left him, determined to uncover the true meaning of Nexus Dei. Each new clue painted a more sinister picture of the Vatican's plans, but the significance of the stone remained elusive. Hwang discovered a heavily redacted report buried in the documents. It described a relic unearthed during an archaeological excavation in the Apennine Mountains, funded secretly by Vatican-aligned entities. The artifact was referred to as Lapis Divinitatis, or the Divine Stone. According to the report, it wasn't just a relic. It was said to hold the essence of divine authority, capable of reshaping human will. One chilling note in the margin stood out. With the stone, no nation can resist. Nexus Day will be complete. That evening, a guard delivered a book to Hwang's cell. It was worn and ancient, with no title on the cover. Inside was a single piece of paper with a handwritten note. Page 73. Answers lie within. Hwang flipped to the page, finding a passage that described an ancient prophecy. The text spoke of a time when chaos would reign, and a chosen few would rise to restore order. The key to this restoration, it claimed, was a sacred object, a stone infused with the power to command nations. Hwang's pulse quickened. The Pietra Divina wasn't just a tool for control, it was the centerpiece of the Vatican's grand design, a means to achieve global dominance under the guise of divine will. Later that night, Hwang received another message, this time slipped under his cell door. The custodians are coming. Act now. The warning was clear. Time was running out. The next day, Hwang managed to smuggle a letter to Michael Graves, detailing everything he had uncovered. He urged Graves to meet him at a safe location and promised to bring proof of the Vatican's conspiracy. The response came swiftly. We'll meet at the chapel in the old district. Midnight. Be careful. Hwang felt a surge of hope. This was his chance to expose the truth, to deliver the information to someone who could act on it. At midnight, Hwang slipped out of his cell with the help of an insider, a guard who had grown disillusioned with the Vatican's reach. The guard led him through the prison's labyrinthine corridors, avoiding cameras and patrols. You don't know what you're up against, the guard said as they reached the final gate. Be careful. Once they know you're out, they won't stop. Hwang nodded, clutching the documents tightly. Thank you. I won't let this go to waste. The chapel was dark and quiet, its once majestic interior now cloaked in decay. Graves stood near the altar, his face illuminated by the flickering light of a single candle. You made it, Graves said, relief evident in his voice. Hwang approached, setting the documents on the altar. It's all here. Everything they're planning. Everything they've done. We need to get this to the State Department. Graves hesitated, his expression hardening. Do you really think they'll act on it? The Vatican's reach goes deeper than you realize. They have allies in every corner of the government. That doesn't matter, Hwang replied. If we don't try, they'll win. The world needs to know. Before Graves could respond, the chapel doors creaked open. A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candle. From the shadows emerged Father Adrian, flanked by two custodians. I warned you, Mr. Hwang, Adrian said, his voice calm yet filled with menace. Some truths are not meant to be revealed. Hwang's blood ran cold. You can't stop this. The evidence is here. It's over. Adrian smiled faintly. You misunderstand. It was over the moment you started this foolish crusade. The custodians moved forward, their presence suffocating. Graves turned to Hwang, his face a mask of resignation. I'm sorry, he whispered. Before Hwang could react, Graves stepped aside, allowing the custodians to seize the documents. You betrayed me, Hwang said, his voice trembling with anger. Graves avoided his gaze. They have my family. I didn't have a choice. Adrian retrieved the documents, tucking them into his robes. This has been an enlightening exercise, Mr. Hwang, but your part in it ends here. The custodians advanced, their intentions clear. Hwang backed away, desperation in his eyes. You can kill me, he said, his voice breaking, but the truth will come out eventually. Adrian's smile returned, colder than ever. Perhaps, but by then, it will no longer matter. The last thing Hwang saw was the flicker of the candle being reignited, casting long shadows across the chapel walls. Days passed, and Bill Hwang's disappearance was quietly buried under layers of bureaucracy and misdirection. Official reports cited an escape attempt gone wrong. His death was attributed to an unfortunate accident. The media moved on quickly, consumed by other headlines. But those who knew the truth, those who had been close enough to see the shadowy hand of the Vatican, understood what had really happened. Hwang hadn't simply vanished. He had been erased. In the Vatican, Father Adrian stood in a grand chamber, its vaulted ceilings adorned with centuries-old frescoes. He placed the documents Hwang had so desperately tried to expose onto the marble table before him. Around him sat members of the Vatican's highest council, their faces shrouded in the dim light. "The crisis has been averted," Adrian said, his voice calm and measured. "The Pietra Divina remains under our protection, and our plans remain intact." A cardinal to his left nodded solemnly. "And Hwang?" "Handled," Adrian replied. "He will not trouble us again." The Pope, seated at the head of the table, spoke for the first time. His voice was soft, but carried the weight of centuries of authority. "The stone's power is immense, but so is its danger. We must proceed with caution. The world is not yet ready for the full restoration of divine order." Adrian bowed his head, bowed. "Of course, Your Holiness. We are ensuring that the groundwork is laid. The United States' influence continues to wane, and the fractures we've sown are deepening. Soon, they will turn to us for guidance." Across the Atlantic, the ripple effects of the Vatican's plans were already being felt. A sudden economic downturn sent shockwaves through global markets. Political infighting in Washington reached unprecedented levels, with factions splintering under the weight of ideological divides. Behind closed doors, world leaders scrambled to make sense of the chaos. Some turned to the Vatican for counsel, unaware of the hand guiding their downfall. In a quiet corner of Rome, Michael Graves sat alone in a small cafe, staring at the newspaper in his hands. The headline read, "Financial Scandal Deepens as U.S. Markets Falter." He folded the paper, his face etched with guilt. He had delivered Hwang to the custodians, believing it would protect his family, but the weight of his betrayal was unbearable. A woman approached his table, her expression serious. "It's done?" she asked, sitting across from him without invitation. Graves nodded. "He's gone. The documents are back in their hands." The woman leaned closer, her voice low. "And do you think that will stop them? The stone, the plan, it's all still in motion. It's all... You've only delayed the inevitable." Graves's hands trembled. "What was I supposed to do? They threatened my family." The woman sighed, her tone softening. "You can't fight them alone. No one can. But there are others who know the truth. If you want redemption, you'll help us find them." Back in the Vatican, Father Adrian stood before the Pietra Divina, housed in a gilded reliquary deep within the catacombs. The stone pulsed faintly, a soft, rhythmic glow that seemed to hum with life. He placed a hand on the reliquary, his expression a mixture of reverence and resolve. "Soon," he murmured, "soon, the world will see the light." The final remnants of Hwang's life were quietly erased. The guard who had helped him escape was reassigned and later disappeared under suspicious circumstances. The chapel where he had made his stand was burned to the ground, leaving no trace of his defiance. The Vatican's reach extended further than ever, its influence shaping the world in ways the public could scarcely imagine. As crises unfolded, the Church presented itself as the beacon of stability, drawing nations into its fold under the guise of salvation, and the Pietra Divina remained hidden, waiting for the day it would fulfill its purpose. In a small office in Washington, a low-level analyst sifted through encrypted files flagged by a surveillance program. One file, marked Nexus Day, caught their attention. As they opened it, the faint outline of a stone glowing in the dark appeared on the screen, accompanied by a single phrase, "The faithful will inherit the earth." The analyst frowned, unaware of the forces they had just stumbled upon. Far away, in the depths of the Vatican, the stone pulsed once more,